Hey everyone, I'm Jean Chatsky. Thanks so much for joining me today on HerMoney. So let me ask you a question. How are you feeling specifically about your job or your career? Depending on what industry you're in, you may be concerned about layoffs or consolidation or a year that just isn't going to be as good as it was in the past. A recent survey from the folks at Bankrate revealed that 88% of workers who are worried about their job security are planning to take action within the next year. That includes everything from searching for a new job to asking for a raise to thinking about or considering relocation or even just quitting altogether. These workers are realizing that we're in uncertain times and are planning to make positive career changes on their own terms while they still can. The survey also found people are changing jobs more frequently than ever before. 55% of the workforce looked for a new job in 2023. That's up from 51% in 2022. We're going to dig into why that is. And I know that many of you have big goals, big career goals, big business goals that you are working to hit in 2024 and beyond. We are going to talk about how you do that as well. And I'm so excited to be doing it with Fran Hauser. You may remember Fran. She was on our show back in 2018. She is a leading career expert, a former Fortune 500 executive, author of the best-selling book, The Myth of the Nice Girl, as well as the companion workbook, Embrace the Work, Love Your Career, which has become the go-to curriculum for women's affinity groups nationwide. And before we jump into the episode, can I just say we love you guys. We love our HerMoney podcast community. One of our listeners recently wrote, finance and investing can be daunting for us regular folks, but Jean boils complex concepts down to their essence and explains financial matters in ways you can understand. If you're a regular listener and you haven't left us a review, please take a second, write us a review on Apple Podcasts. I know it sounds silly, but these things really do make a difference, and you might hear yours on the next episode. And now let me welcome Fran Hauser back to the show. Hey, Fran.
Hi, Jean. It's so
How?
nice to see you.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice to see you too. It hasn't been since 2018. We saw each other, I think it was in DC, actually, at a conference. Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Yes. Was it? I think it was one of the conferences for women.
And it may not have been DC. It may have been a different city somewhere across the country. But I do remember sitting with you and signing books at the
Yes.
same time. So nice to
Yeah.
see you.
So nice to see you. I can't believe it's been 6 years since 2018, though.
I know. Well, for my listeners who are newer or who aren't familiar with you, you've done so many different things. Tell us a little bit about your career path and bring us up to date since The Myth of the Nice Girl.
Yeah. Well, I've had a very long and varied career, that's for sure. I spent many, many years in corporate. Jean, you and I were at Time Inc. together, where I ran digital for brands like People Magazine and InStyle, Entertainment Weekly. Such a fun job. And, I was an executive at that company. I left corporate about 12 years ago and moved into startup investing. And I've now invested in over 35 female founded companies, which has been really amazing. I've written two books, as you mentioned. And so now, this is what my professional life looks like. First of all, I always like to say I'm a multi-hyphenate, and I feel fortunate actually to be able to work on projects that really feed me and to work with people who I really love to work with. Where I'm spending most of my time right now is on my thought leadership platform, which is all around really helping women create careers that they love while staying true to themselves. And I do that through my books and through speaking and my digital content. And I also have a business called BookBound, where I help aspiring authors get their books out into the world. So get them published and help them with their launch plans. So I've really kind of pulled back on the startup investing as of last year and really focusing more on this thought leadership platform and on BookBound. So that's where I am today.
Well, and BookBound, by the time this episode launches, will be a podcast. And our listeners who have aspirations of publishing a book someday should 100% tune in.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. It's been really fun. We're just wrapping the first season, and it's just intimate conversations with successful female nonfiction authors about their publishing journeys. Like how did they find their agent? How did they get how did they land the deal? If they decided to go a different path, the non-traditional path, maybe a hybrid publisher or self-publishing. So it's been such an incredible learning experience for me. And it's just really been a lot of fun. So I'm excited for it to be out in the world.
Well, as an author myself, I can't wait to listen and see what sort of lessons are there to be just soaked right up. So very, very exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So since you and I have talked, COVID, right? I mean, COVID existed. It still exists. We live in this world that's kind of sort of remote, hybrid. You have to come back to the office. Where are we right now in the scheme of how we are being asked to work?
Yeah, it's still a little bit all over the place. I think there is definitely, I would say, more hybrid than there was even a year ago, where companies really do want to see their employees physically at work, even if it's not 5 days a week, some portion of the week. And that's been a huge adjustment for people. Especially, I talk with and I work with a lot of moms, and it's been a huge change for them, right? Because they went from being able to work completely remotely and have all that flexibility. They gave up their caregivers, and now it's, oh, okay, wait a second. I have to find a caregiver again. I have to figure out what this is going to look like. So it's really been a big adjustment for people. And what's interesting is the other kind of big, I don't even want to say trend, but the big thing that I'm hearing from senior HR leaders at these big companies where I go in and do these talks, this is the consistent thing that I'm hearing, is that for people that are in the earlier parts of their career, say the first 10 years of their careers, there's more of an expectation from these people that their manager is going to figure out their career for them.
That's
Which is
interesting.
really interesting. And it's something, I can't tell you how many companies have said to me, can you, when you come in and you do your talk, can you cover this idea of owning your career and really having agency over your career and what that looks like, and not relying on other people to figure it out for you? This is a consistent thing. It literally came up twice last week in prep calls that I had. So I'm not sure if that's COVID related or related to other stuff going on in our culture, but that's a really interesting kind of theme that I've been seeing.
I'm wondering if it's, and I'd love you to sort of explain a little bit more of what that means when you ask your manager to chart your career. I'm wondering if it's related at all to helicopter parenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
If this is the generation where their parents charted their course and now they're looking to the next person with seniority or power or to essentially step into that role.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a really great point. And from a technology perspective, right, because of these phones, where even as a parent, I have 2 kids in middle school, and the fact that I have 24/7 access to their grades is so bad. I don't think it's a good thing, right? And I really have to hold myself back from checking all the time, because they need to be the ones that are checking. They need to be the ones that are staying on top of their grades. And, there's all these great books that have been written about even when kids then go to college and their parents are still involved, right? Julie Lythcott-Haynes wrote a great book about this. She was the dean of freshmen at Stanford University. And she said she couldn't believe how many parents were reaching out to her because their kids have access 24/7 access to their parents through these phones, right, where they're constantly texting them. And right, so you're right, is this the next stage now? Like, you're in your career and you've always had somebody there kind of guiding you, and making sure that you don't fall.
So, what is your advice to these? I assume they're fairly entry level, younger people, first decade of their career. What
Yeah.
are you saying to them about taking agency, and how do you get the confidence to decide that the move that you think you want to make for yourself is really the right move? Then you can, in fact, take that step.
Yeah. Look, I think a lot of it is about proactively creating your own opportunities. And I just think about those moments in my career where, I'll give you an example. Like back when I was at Moviephone, this was so long
Oh my
ago,
God,
right?
Mr.
But
Movie
so
Phone.
long ago. But, we launched the website, moviephone.com. And I remember having a conversation with someone on my team where we realized that there was this huge like revenue opportunity that was just like we were just leaving money on the table. And we went to my boss and we said, we want to do something about this. And he said, go do it. Like the two of you just focus on this one thing and see what you can do. And 25% of our revenue the following year ended up coming in through this one channel. And it's like it's those moments of like really being intentional and understanding what's going on in the world and how does that impact your business, and is there a way to capitalize on it, and not just like sitting back and waiting for things to come to you, but like really being proactive, being ambitious, raising your hand. If there's high profile projects going on all around you and you're not on one of those project teams, raising your hand to be on one of those teams, because you want your work to be visible. You want to be top of mind for people, right?
Yeah.
For promotions, so I think so much of it, Jean, is like just getting out of this autopilot mode and being really intentional and being really proactive. And I think tactically speaking, like what this has looked like for me over the years is I actually have time blocked off on my calendar like once a month. It's an hour. Sometimes I don't even take the full hour, where I really like tune into what's energizing me and what's draining me in my work. And how can I figure out a way to lean into the stuff that's energizing, and how can I let go of the stuff that's draining? And when you do that, like when you take that kind of action, it creates space to really help you unlock new opportunities. So it's doing that reflection. It's getting out of that autopilot mode and doing that reflection.
I have never done that exercise, but I am doing it, if not today, then later this week, because I need this. I'm thinking about, like, I know the things that are draining me, and if I could get rid of them, which I think I probably can, or at least get rid of them to some degree,
Yep.
it's a
Yeah.
huge possibility.
It is. And put them on your to-don't list. I always have a to-don't list. And what's really so amazing about having things on a to-don't list, I'll give you an example. Like right now, I'm not taking on any new board roles. And I have to tell you, it makes it really easy when someone reaches out to me and asks me to consider a board seat, because my response is just, I've decided to not take on any new board roles this year. It's so like the way that the person receives it then is that it's nothing personal. It's a
Right.
strategic decision that I made, right? So it's like making decisions around the projects, the initiatives that it's no for now. I could always revisit it in 3 months, 6 months, a year, but these are the things that I'm not going to do right now. And the other things that can go on your to-don't list are behaviors that no longer serve you,
Right.
right? Things like, I'll tell you, for me, the stuff that I've struggled with, like throughout my whole career, people pleasing, over preparing. Even like lately, I've been like noticing like the last couple of months, I've been complaining more. And it's so draining and complaining about like silly little things. And I don't know, I'm like, why am I doing that? It's just it's so silly. But it's like being aware of it and nipping it in the bud. It's like just really, it's that hyper awareness.
Talk to me about over preparing, because I
Mhm.
think over preparing is such a female trait, right?
Oh,
I am 100% guilty of this. I spent 4 hours this weekend writing a speech that I've essentially given many, many, many times. I mean,
yeah.
I was taking different pieces. I needed an extra 10 minutes, but could I have probably gotten up there and winged it? Oh, yes.
Yeah. And it is definitely a male female thing. I've seen it my whole entire career. And there was a moment, you'll really appreciate this, when we were at Time and I had just come back from my first maternity leave and I had an idea for a new product. And just to talk about, to socialize the idea with my boss, I spent 40 hours putting a PowerPoint deck together to go in and have a conversation. And I watched a male colleague of mine who I adore and love. Literally, I swear to you, I watched him just knock on her door, go in, sit down, and have a 10-minute conversation with her. He had his like three sound bites in his head because he had his own thing that he wanted to talk to her
Right.
about. And I'm like, that's the difference right there. I wasn't formally pitching. I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't going to the CFO to ask for money. I was just socializing an idea. Why am I putting a PowerPoint deck together? And it's like, I think that's like the perfect example where, there are so many times where we could spend an hour, you could have spent an hour probably instead of four.
Yep.
I could have spent 2 hours instead of 40. I mean, so it's just really having having a mindset that's more like good enough. Is it good enough? And I am working on that. I've been working on that for years, but I am like really, really focusing on that. Over the weekend, I had a proposal that I needed to put together, and they asked for a rough sketch of a proposal. And the old me would have been like, no, it has to be perfect. They said rough sketch. I'm like, you
Right.
know what? This is going to be a rough sketch. It's going to be bullet points.
Yeah.
It's going to be ranges of opportunities. You know what I'm saying? It's like, let it be
And
more of a conversation.
it's fine. I'm in the process of working on nipping at a new book, and I had a meeting last week with my agent and with some other people on the team, and I had put together not a full proposal, but some thoughts, right? And I actually just sent it out saying, this is something for you to react to. This is,
Beautiful.
and even if I had done the entire thing, the upshot would have been the same. They would have said, we need a little time to react. So, you
Yep.
know,
And the other thing I noticed too, because I'm also working on a book proposal, is send like pieces at a time. There's this like perfectionism where that I have to fight, this like urge of like, I just want the whole thing done and I want it to look beautiful and for it to be cohesive and just want to send the whole thing in. And I literally am doing the same thing with my agent where it's just section by section. And even if I'm like 80% of the way there on the section, I would rather send it in because she's going to give me feedback
yeah,
that, I mean, right?
work life balance is another thing that I think we're still hearing an awful lot about. There was a survey last year, came from the Muse. Work life balance, it said, is so critical that more than half of people said there is no amount of pay increase that would persuade them to sacrifice it. So this is a notion that I hear it from my kids. So my kids are a little bit older than yours. Specifically, not so much from my daughter, who our listeners know because she does our mailbag segment with me, but from my son, who is almost 30 and works a job where he's remote a couple of days a week and in the office a couple of days a week. And he said if a job said to him you have to be in every day, he would not do that job.
Mm-hmm.
Are you where do you think that work life balance fits into the equation, and specifically into the financial equation, the ambition equation, the
Yeah.
success equation.
Yeah. I think it's people just they don't want to sacrifice that balance. I just think about going back to like parts of my career where I remember even just asking to work from home like 1 day a week. And it was like a hard and fast no because I was a senior executive and what would the precedent that it would set and right, all of that. And it's interesting. I ended up leaving. That's why I left corporate because I wanted to create a more flexible professional life for myself because I wanted to see my kids. And
Yeah.
that was really important to me, right? And I feel a lot of people are in that same boat. They're not willing to give up that time with their family, with their friends, traveling, doing whatever it is that fills them up as a human being, right? They don't want to give that up. So I totally get that. And I do think that companies, because of COVID, are so much more flexible than they used to be. I mean, could you imagine like somebody now saying you can't work from home 1 day a week?
No, but I hear what you said. I mean, I was so fortunate early in my career when I had my first child. I was not at Time Inc. yet. I was at Smart Money, which was Hearst and Dow Jones, and my boss, who's now the CEO of the Hearst Corporation,
Mhm.
basically said, "I have decided that I am going to be a good place for working moms. How many days a week do you want to work from home?"
Amazing.
And I was able to do that my entire career. Now, the flip side of that was that it was really clear that I was going to be a writer and not be an editor because writers could be independent and editors not so much, and that was the track that I followed the rest that for years, for decades. So it's not that there weren't choices to be made, but
Yeah.
at least I had the choices.
Yeah, I know, which is amazing. I mean, look, I think so much of it comes down to creating value for the organization, and as long as you can show that you will create a ton of value for the company, that actually you'll probably create more value in a hybrid role
Yeah.
or in a remote or whatever it is that you're asking, and you demonstrate that, then any manager is going to be like, okay, great, right? I think that the challenge is when the value's not there. If the value's there, great. And then obviously the financial piece of it is commensurate with that, right? But yeah, I always go back to, are you creating value for the company that you work for? What does that look like? And I'm always encouraging people to really think about what are the company's bigger priorities and are you working on at least one project that is like deeply aligned with those priorities? I think that's really critical. Like when you look at your calendar and you look at your to-do list and you look at where your time is going. Because again, it goes back to like being visible. Even
Yeah.
if you're not there, you're still visible because you're working on a project that the executive team really cares about. So I think that's another piece to just kind of think about.
I started the show talking about the huge number of people that are looking for new opportunities. I want to come back and talk about some advice for them. But before we do that, I also want to tell everybody that the HerMoney podcast is now, woohoo, we are on YouTube. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It's at HerMoney. You'll get notified about all the new episodes. You can let us know what you think about those episodes in the comments. We like comments, so thank you for that. We are going to take a quick break. We're back with Fran Hauser, author of Embrace the Work, Love Your Career. So we started, Fran, with this notion that 56% of people said they were looking for new jobs in 2023. We're into the new year. Many people may be refreshing that job search. If you're diving into it with a fervor at this point, what do you say to people who are ready to make a change? How do you know if it's time to leave? How do you know if you should stay at your current company and look for a new opportunity? Where's the best place to start these days?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would recommend that you do is if you're in a place where you're just not happy, like you're not feeling fulfilled, but the environment is not toxic. Like if it's a toxic environment, my advice is always like you have to get out of there as quickly as possible, right? But
Yeah.
if it's not a toxic environment and it's just you're feeling a little bored, you're getting that itch, I encourage people to stay in the job while you're looking for your next thing. And I want to be clear about that because I can't tell you like how many times people have said to me, I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to quit and I'm going to look for the. It's like, look, if the environment is not toxic, just stay while you do your outreach, while you're, because it's all about relationships, right? It's about reaching out to people, letting them know that you're thinking about your next chapter, asking for their advice, their input, asking them to introduce you to other people who might be helpful. I mean, it's all about people. I always say that it's all about people. It's not about your skills really as much. It's just about like reaching out to people in your world that can be helpful in one way or another.
I often find that people think it's an imposition to network. It's an imposition to ask. We're not as comfortable on the telephone as we used to be. Many of us, emails tend to go into the void. If you did leave a voicemail, nobody checks it. I mean, how do you encourage people to get comfortable with this as somebody who I know gets asked for advice all the time?
All the time, right? I have to tell you that this is the biggest thing that I would say is, especially for younger people, don't wait until you need the person to engage. Don't wait until you need the person to engage with them. And here's the thing. I have a lot of younger people in my life, and they're the ones that are very engaged with me, even on social media. Like they might share something that I post. They'll comment. They'll reach out every once in a while and say, Fran, I'm like working on your book. I love it so much. I just recommended it to a few other people. Like those are the people that have this consistency in my life and they're engaging with me. So when it's time for them to think about their next chapter and they reach out to me, it's a no-brainer for me to help them. It does feel a little bit, I don't even know what the right word is to use, but I I don't love it when people like just reach out like out of the blue, and ask for help just because I feel like it just feels very transactional like to
Mm-hmm.
me. So I think my biggest advice to people is don't wait until you need the help. Think about the people that are in your life, they're in your network. Are there very easy ways that you can engage with them and be helpful to them so that when it's time for them to be helpful to you, like they'll do it wholeheartedly and not just because they feel like they have to because you're a family friend or because you're right. So
Yeah.
I think that's like my biggest thing is like don't wait until you need it. Like you it's like it's that relationship building, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's also, I think, this personal brand building that kind of has to go on throughout the stages of our career. I mean,
Yes.
you're really interesting. As you said, you're a multi hyphenate. You've done a lot of very different things, but your ethos is present in all of them. For people who are trying to cultivate their own brand, what are the pieces? I mean, it's not as simple as putting up a website where people can find your work or maybe adding to your LinkedIn. It's more than that.
Yeah. And look, I think it really starts with like what do you want to be known for? Like what do you want your brand to be? Because it could be a softer thing. Like for me, like I think right now my brand is really around like my nice girl, leading with kindness and strength and loving your career and doing that while staying true to yourself. But there have been other times in my career where like when I was at Coca-Cola very early on in my career, my personal brand, you'll really relate to this, Jean, was all about being able to take complex information and simplify it and make it really digestible because I worked in financial reporting. And that's what I became known for. Literally, like I got this promotion. When I got this promotion and I asked, why did I get this promotion? My boss said, it's because you can do that. You can take really complicated stuff and simplify it. And that was my brand. And that was more of a hard skill, right? But it's like it starts with kind of what do you want to be known for? What do you think what is your zone of genius? What are you really really good at? Like, what's your superpower? And if you don't know, ask people. Like, even ask your friends and colleagues to describe you in a few words. What would they say? How would they describe you? And I just think it's really important in all of the content that you create, whether it's a website, whether it's social media, that ethos is there. It's consistent. You have that through line.
And I do think with social media, and maybe I'm wrong on this, by the way, because I'm not a digital native. I do my best, but I think it's important that your personal life on social is reflective of the way that you want to be seen in the work world. I don't think that people can separate them anymore.
No, you can't. Absolutely. 1,000%. Because you know that HR departments they're looking at social media before they send your application along. So yes, being very thoughtful about what you're posting. I think that's a huge part of it. And it's a big transition for people when they go like from high school to college, you know.
And from college out. Yeah.
And then from college out. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of it.
What are you looking forward to in 2024?
Oh gosh, well, one of the things that I've really loved since I left corporate is the fact that I can just like plant all these seeds and just see which are the ones that take off and then like really kind of like lean into those. But I love the idea that I can try a bunch of different things and see.
It sounds good. We call it throwing spaghetti against a wall, but same notion. You see what sticks, you see what takes off, you see what you enjoy. It's important. Where can we find more of you? Where should we look for the podcast?
Yeah, so franhauser.com and then also bookboundco.com, which is where all the podcast information will be.
We are tuning in. Fran Hauser, thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Jean. Happy New Year.